Good evening from the land of Israel. With Hashem's loving grace, we're back with another evening of Rebbe Nachman's teachings. Tonight we have a two-for-one deal. We're going to be learning one of Rebbe Nachman's short tales, classic short tales, and one of his discourses. So tonight we're going to be learning The Turkey Prince, and we're going to be learning Likutei Moharan in the first section, Torah 119, discourse number 119. So Rebbe Nachman's classic parable of the Turkey Prince, it seems really absurd, but it's actually a cogent reflection of the emoji generation. It's what we call this, the smartphone generation. Rebbe Nachman foresaw what would be this generation, and he's going to tell us all about it. Okay, so with Hashem's loving grace, once the king's son went completely mad, and he thought he was a turkey. Didn't think he'd act like a turkey, dressed up like a turkey, gobbled like a turkey, ate crumbs from the floor like a turkey. And he felt compelled to sit under the table. He didn't want to sit at the dinner table with the king. No, that's not for him. He's not human. He's a turkey. So he acted like a turkey. And he put a plate of grains and crumbs under the table. And he sat under the table. And he pulled it bits and bread, just like a turkey, pecked at them. And none of the doctors could do anything. And to finally realize if the situation got worse, because he looked at the turkeys didn't have clothes. He's wearing a shirt, and turkeys didn't wear a shirt, took off his shirt. He was wearing trousers. The turkeys weren't wearing trousers, took off his trousers. So he was finally under the table, acting like a turkey, completely unclad. Well, the king called all the psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians in the kingdom, and nobody could help the young man. Nobody seemed to help the young man. Finally, a wise man came, and the wise man said to the king, conclusively, he says, I can cure him. So the wise man, what did he do? He went under the table, and he took off all of his clothes, and he set himself a plate of grains, sunflower seeds, and the king's son, the turkey son, the turkey prince, he looked at him, he said, who are you? And the wise man said, hello, I'm a turkey. He says, no, I'm a turkey. So I'm a turkey. What, there's only one turkey in the world? No, there's more than one turkey in the world. Okay. So why did you have turkey? That means you're not allowed to have company? Yeah, you can have company. Well, let's have you. They both ate their seeds off the floor and agreed. So after a while, when the turkey prince got used to the wise man turkey, and so the wise man turkey said, is there any reason that we have to be cold? It's a little bit chilly here, isn't it? No, he says, I admitted, the king's son admitted that it was cold. He says, is there any reason that a turkey can't put a shirt on? And he thought, he said, no, there's no reason a turkey can't put a shirt on. So the wise man motioned that they should send him two shirts. So they threw two shirts under the table, and the wise man gave one to the turkey prince, and he put on one. So they both put on the shirts. Then they got used to the shirts. They're still eating their sunflower seeds, their grains of corn off the floor. And finally, the wise man says to the young man, he says, right, a little bit unsightable that we're with no trousers. Is there any reason that a turkey can't wear trousers? He says, I never saw a turkey wearing trousers. He said, well, turkeys have a lot of feathers. I don't see that we have feathers. So maybe we could put on the trousers instead of feathers. Well, the turkey prince, he thought about that. And that made sense. And he didn't think of it that way. So he said, okay, he agreed. So the wise man motioned outside that somebody should throw him in two pairs of trousers. And they threw him two pairs of trousers. They both put on trousers. And they continue acting like turkeys and gobbling to each other. And they became best of friends. And finally, the wise man said, is there any reason that we have to eat off the floor? He says, no, didn't really think. He said, oh, the turkey, if you put a plate in front of a turkey will eat off a plate. He'll put corns or grains on a plate. Okay. So the wise man motioned, set him on the plate. And then he started thinking, he says, aren't you a little bit tired? The wise man said to the turkey prince, aren't you a little tired from this diet of turkey and grains? I mean, turkeys, they graze, they go out, they're not confined to under a table. They can eat in the pasture, they can eat green, they can eat salads. Is there any reason that we have to remain under this table? Turkey prince they thought. And he said, no, not really. So he said, okay, let's go out of the table. Then they both exited the table. They came under the table. And he says, is there any reason that turkeys can't sit on chairs? He said, I'll show you. So if you put a roost and a turkey, they can sit on a roost. So we can sit on chairs. We're built a little bit different than the ones with the feathers. So we're turkeys with two hands and two legs. And it's not so comfortable for us to sit on a roost. So can we sit by the table? And he pondered. He said, that's fine. And one by one, they came and they sat by the table. He said, there's all the good food on the table. He said, is there any reason that turkey can't eat this good food? They thought, no. Little by little, the wise man nursed him back into good health until he finally acted like a prince and dressed like a prince, spoke like a prince, and finally realized that he wasn't a turkey. And this is how the wise man dealt with the turkey. What's Rebbe Nachman telling us? Rebbe Nachman telling us that you have to get down to their level. We see in this generation, there are people that completely can't understand. Sometimes you say hello to people and they can't smile. Why they can't smile? Because for them, what I call the emoji generation, for them a smile is, they don't write a word. It's a colon and a parentheses, and that's a smile. Everything's an emoji. And you see people walking, they're not even concerned with their lives. They think they're turkeys. They think they're smartphone turkeys or high-tech turkeys. Walk in the street. It's dangerous walking the street. There's traffic coming. And they walk with their head down in the field, never raise their head. Never raise their head from the cell phone, never raise their head from the smartphone. So you ask the young people, is there any reason you can't look at the sky? Rebbe Nachman said that. There's going to be a day where people won't know the color of the sky. He says, with his wisdom, it's for every generation. This is the wisdom of Torah, the wisdom of the tzaddik. And he foresaw exactly what would happen. So what the tzaddik does, he gets down to their level. What does this do? This is an expression of compassion. And people don't realize that they're turkeys. A whole generation doesn't realize that they're turkeys. For example, let's be honest with one another. We all know the principles of Emunah. We all know that Hashem runs the world. To think that someone doesn't know about Hashem, that's a turkey. That's like a human being not knowing about clothes, not knowing about a dinner table, thinking that he or she has to act like an animal and eat that food of animal. And that's the whole difference. Because what makes us different from animals? Emunah. That we are aware, this would be learning in Emunah Hour and the Path to Our Peak lessons, and rising, that we're not just a body, we're a soul. And sometimes it takes the tzaddik of the generation to remind us that we're bodies and not souls. So people say, what are they yelling at us for? When they say that we're spending so much time on the internet, spending so much time in the cell phone. Look at the damage done to people. People have become actually brain dead. And what's happening, for example, movies today are much different than movies were 50 years ago. A scene in a movie 50 years ago would be 8 to 10 seconds. Now, they flash before. They have to flash all the time to catch your attention. Teachers complain today that they can't compete with the computer games. They can't entertain the kids. So how do they teach the kids mathematics? They have to dance and jump. The kids' minds are used to being entertained, and because they're all the time in computer games, all the time their eyes are in a screen. That's why we don't allow our children to have screens. It's only books. But we have to be reminded that we're not turkeys. A turkey has a body. A turkey has a bird body, an animal body, and we have a soul. We have a human soul, and this makes us different. So what we have to do is have compassion on the generation, This is what behooves every one of us to spread Emunah in the world. And that's the whole purpose of our group, our two learning groups together, our Emunah Beams group and our Likutei Moharan group, to spread the teachings of Rebbe Nachman, to spread the teachings of Emunah, the teachings of Rebbe Nachman. This is for Emunah for this generation, and this is the light of Emunah. Rebbe Nachman said, my fire will burn until the coming of Mashiach. And we said, what's this fire? The fire is the knowledge, the awareness of Emunah. Everything that Rebbe Nachman taught, it's all in the Torah, but a person has to have a complete knowledge of Torah to know where it is. Rebbe Nachman took the knowledge of Torah and brought it down to our eye level. And he said, where people don't have the power to sit down, the power and the prowess or the wherewithal to learn Torah, I'll bring it to their eye level. And this is what the purpose of Rebbe Nachman's stories. Okay, so this is a short story, but I want to take one of Rebbe Nachman's discourses and see what we do with this. So what do we do? So what do we do? That's fine. All right, we have this tale about the turkey prince. Now, what do we do about it? We open up Likutei Moharan to the second part, Torah 119, the first part, first part, Torah 119. And Rebbe Nachman says, that a person who visits a sick person on Shabbat, it doesn't say you should have a full and complete recovery. There's an expression, he says, that Hashem has the capable of having compassion on you. So what does that mean? Hashem can't be capable of compassion because our speech on Shabbat is different than our speech during the week. But what does Rebbe Nachman do with this? He says there's a whole teaching that's intrinsic in this expression where Hashem has the capability to have compassion. Why not? Why don't they say categorically that Hashem has compassion? Hashem has the capability of compassion because there's one condition, and this is a big condition that Rebbe Nachman teaches us in this Torah, that Hashem runs the world measure for measure. If we want Hashem to have compassion on us, then we need to have compassion on other people. And this is what it means that Hashem has the ability to have compassion on you. Of course, Hashem has the ability. He can do whatever he wants. But that means that not necessarily, because Hashem will not have compassion on a person who lacks spiritual awareness. This is what we're going to learn. Now we'll go into the detail. They lack spiritual awareness. So in other words, if a person thinks he or she is a turkey, that is a lack of spiritual awareness. No, you're not a turkey. You have a human soul. It's a neshama. That's a tiny part of Hashem. A turkey does not have that. A turkey has its basic bird soul, his basic animal bird from the animal domain. The animals, the birds, the fish. We learned that there are 4 domains in Kabbalah of existence. There's the basic domain is the mineral domain. Then there's the vegetative domain. Then there's the animal domain that includes the animals, the fish, the birds of the sky. And then there's the human domain. That's the speech. But within the speech domain, the human domain, there's a spiritual awareness, ones that have spiritual awareness and ones that don't. The ones that don't have spiritual awareness, they have a dull, the higher part of the soul. The divine part of their soul remains dormant. And they don't. And so you see what people that are walking around like zombies in the street with their heads down, like a turkey, they're about to peck at the seeds on the floor, and their head is down at the cell phone. They're not concerned with the traffic coming this way. Drivers act like that. Drivers have maybe one eye on the road and one eye on their cell phone. And this is why it's so dangerous to drive, because there's dangerous people on the road. And it's dangerous, even if you're a driver, there's dangerous pedestrians, because there are people jaywalking in the middle of the street, and they're not looking where they're going. You have to be careful not to hit them. So this is, if they don't have enough spiritual awareness, which is da'at, D-A-A-T, enough spiritual awareness to guard their own lives, then Hashem doesn't have compassion on them. Hashem has compassion on people who have spiritual awareness, number one. Number two, Hashem has compassion on people who have compassion on others. And this is what Rebbe Nachman says right now. He says, Sh'adam tzarich rachamim, Hashem yiborach sholech lo rachmanut, she'u yerachem al acher. When a person needs divine compassion, Hashem sends him the compassion he needs for others. He should have compassion for others, a chance to be compassionate on others, because when Hashem gives him a chance to be compassionate on others, and he takes that chance and he uses it to be compassionate on other people, he goes out of his ego mode, that has lack of a spiritual awareness mode, and he has compassion on others. Because you have compassion on others, now you're a human being. Now you're a human being with a divine soul, because you have compassion on another person. Why compassion on the person? Why does that uplift you? Because that is a divine quality. Divine compassion, chesed, this is what Hashem has on us. When we have compassion on other people, we're acting just the same way that Hashem acts with us. So when we have compassion on other people, Hashem has compassion on us. And that's why the Gemara says, when you pray for another person and you need the same thing, Hashem has compassion on you, and your prayer gets answered first. Because you need the compassion, but you have the compassion on other people, Hashem gives the compassion right back. And this is what it says in the Torah. It's explicit in the Torah. V'natan lecha rachamim v'rachamecha. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 13. Hashem will give you compassion, and you will be compassionate. Okay, if you get the compassion, you don't take the compassion for yourself. Okay, I'm going to take the Hashem's compassion, give it for myself. Hashem gives me compassion, I'm going to share it with other people, because there's something unique about divine light. The difference between, you have $100 in your pocket, and you give your $100 to another person, and you say, well, now I lack the $100. That's not even right, because Hashem is going to give it back to you, and I'll give back even more. But when you have compassion, and you give the compassion to other people, your own compassion that you get from Hashem, it doesn't decrease. Hashem just gives you more. Hashem fills the void right up. And Hashem once said, it's like milking a cow. If you ever on a dairy farm, if you don't milk a cow, the cow doesn't give milk. But the more you milk the cow, the more the cow gives milk. Okay, so Rebbe Nachman continues. Midat harachamim talui b'dat. This is something so important. It's so basic and so important. Torah 119, it's a small, obscure Torah, and people don't pay attention, but it is cardinal in understanding Rebbe Nachman's teachings and understanding ourselves. Midat harachamim talui b'dat. That compassion, the measure of compassion, it is dependent on spiritual awareness. So if a person doesn't have spiritual awareness, a person won't receive compassion from above, and a person won't be able to give compassion. And that's why people who are greedy and selfish, they act like animals. They have no spiritual awareness. Because that spiritual awareness, they knew that with compassion, since it's a divine quality, it comes from Hashem, and it comes from Hashem, there could be unlimited, limitless flow of compassion. Sometimes you see people that they're just so compassionate for everyone. Where do they get all the compassion from? Because they give the compassion, they get the compassion. Sometimes you see a big philanthropist. A big philanthropist says, well, where's he get all this money from? He does a lot of philanthropy. So Hashem fills it back up, fills the tanks back up. So we see that the trait of compassion is dependent on da'at, which is spiritual awareness. And a person who has da'at, a person who has spiritual awareness, has compassion. This is because anger, which is the opposite of compassion, or greed, they're both anger and greed are two animal instincts. And even for an animal, it's not an anger. An animal doesn't have anger. An animal can growl because, again, being threatened. That's an instinct. A person is angry because a person what's anger? Anger is a statement that the person doesn't like the way Hashem's running the world. That what's going. When a person with a moon doesn't get angry. He can be upset. Something is a difficult situation, but he's not angry. Because who are you angry at? Everything comes from Hashem. He alone does, and will do everything. There's a first principle of Lamuna. So if a person is angry, it means that he or she forgot Hashem. So that is a total lack of spiritual awareness. So if there's lack of spiritual awareness, the person gets angry. Hashem is not compassionate on angry people. And anger is the result of foolishness. Foolishness is a lack of spiritual awareness. And this is the connection between Torah 119 and the Turkey Prince, because the Turkey Prince is foolish. The Turkey Prince, how can you forget that you're the son of a king? Why does Rebbe Nachman use the fact that why not the son of the merchant that was a turkey, or why not the doctor's son of turkey, the son of a prince? Because every one of us are sons and daughters of the king. We're all princes and princesses. So when we forget that fact, when we forget that we're not only body, and that we have this divine soul in us, this is the lack of spiritual awareness. So with spiritual awareness, we have compassion, we have happiness, we have emunah, we have trust in Hashem, we have everything good in life. And it all comes from spiritual awareness and it comes from compassion. So it means something is fantastic. Rebbe Nachman tells us that when you give a coin to charity because you have compassion on the poor person, then Hashem right away has compassion on you. Because since you have compassion on you, Hashem must have compassion. And this is why tzedakah, charity, is such an important part of tshuva. When a person makes a mistake and a person transgresses Torah because of a lack of spiritual awareness. Because if he remembered Hashem at a time, in a million years, he wouldn't transgress. What happens all the time, especially when we want to be close to Hashem? Everybody wants to be close to Hashem. But we forgot for a moment that this is Hashem doesn't want us to speak slander, and Hashem doesn't want us to waste time, and Hashem doesn't want us to use eyes in an unauthorized manner. This is Hashem wants us to do what is in His Torah, according to the laws of Torah. So when a person forgets, that's when he transgresses. Because if a person would remember Hashem all the time, he wouldn't transgress. And so one of the Purim songs we sang, we're dancing, Ashrei mi shelo yishkacheka. Happy is the person that doesn't forget you. What does it mean, happy a person forget you? We say Purim, the Purim is Yom Kippurim. Purim is a day like Yom Kippur, because Purim is as a Yom Kippurim, that the Purim, the joy on Purim, it brings forgiveness. Why does it bring forgiveness? Because when we have joy, this strengthens our our spiritual awareness. Other thing, all the mitzvahs of Purim, they strengthen our spiritual awareness because what do? We exchange gifts with our neighbors. We exchange gifts of food. We give matonat levyonim. We give gifts to the poor and give it to the poor. By giving gift to the poor, I have compassion. We have compassion. We're reminded on Purim, especially to have compassion on poor people, because why we're dependent on that, as we did last night in the story of Purim. That if you didn't see that, you can go back and you can see that on laserbeams.com. That the replay is already up. We had an existential threat. There was the threat of annihilation. And we were saved because Hashem had compassion on us. We had the spiritual awareness to do tshuva, 3-day fast. 3-day fast is the fast of Esther. We have a discount now. It's only one day. Monday is the fast of Esther, and Monday night and Tuesday are Purim. And we had compassion on ourselves. And we rekindled our spiritual awareness, so Hashem had compassion on us. So Rebbe Nachman continues. He says, that's why we say this Torah is especially not this, it's magical. It's especially suitable to learn it together with the turkey prince and to learn it before Purim. Now here's something else. If someone has no spiritual awareness, you don't have to have pity on him. You don't have to have compassion. If a person walks around and they think that the whole world is their smartphone and they're not willing to listen to you, okay, you don't have to have compassion on them. You could try and maybe sometimes have extra compassion and try to get them out of the turkey mode, but they don't listen, don't have compassion. Okay. Because if they have no spiritual awareness, they have no vessel for compassion. Spiritual awareness is a spiritual vessel for the light of compassion. And Hashem doesn't take the light of blessing and throw it on the floor. Hashem doesn't take fine wine and spill on the floor. If you want fine wine, Hashem will pour you fine wine, but you have to give him a clear crystal goblet. And by same token, anytime we want any type of divine abundance, we have to give Hashem a kli. It's called in Kabbalah a vessel, a worthy vessel. So spiritual awareness is a worthy vessel for divine compassion. This is what Rebbe Nachman tells us right here. So we talked about anger before. He says, who gets angry? A fool. And this is that words of Rebbe Nachman. This is King Solomon. King Solomon says in Proverbs, that you will find anger in the bosom of foolish people. Why? Because foolish people, what's a fool? They have no spiritual awareness. And they think the whole world is high tech and smartphones, and they like zombies. They can't smile. They don't neshama, and it's the emoji generation. So and that way, if they don't have pity on themselves to activate their own souls, you don't have compassion on your own soul. So how do you want me to have compassion on you? Because you don't care about your own soul. You think yourself's a body. Your whole life is bodily indulgence. Because anyone that has compassion on another person, that from Shemayim, from the heaven, they have compassion on him. But if he doesn't have spiritual awareness and he doesn't want compassion, he doesn't seek compassion, he doesn't seek Hashem. We can't see Hashem. He thinks his whole world is the high-techy world. Sorry, pal. You get no compassion. You try, and Hashem says, try and run the world your way, and let's see how you last. Okay, so our sages tell us that when a person lacks spiritual awareness, it's forbidden to show him compassion because he doesn't have a worthy vessel to receive it. For example, we are not allowed to give charity to an unworthy person, to an idolatrous person, to a dishonest person, because that's the Gemara says that's like doing idolatry. Why? You helping to fuel. They're going to take that money and they're going to use it for idolatry. For example, if you see a guy's obvious drug addict and he's walking around, poor person, have pity on me, and this, no. If you're into drugs and you're drunk and you're down and outer and you're living in the street, you've got no compassion on yourself, because there's plenty of places. You look in the one ads, plenty of people need help. Clean yourself up, go get a job, and have compassion on yourself, and people have compassion on you. So Rebbe Nachman says, so when we visit the sick person on Shabbat, he needs compassion. So we try and invoke for him. This is what we could do for him, and this is how we're allowed to visit the sick people on Shabbat, to invoke divine compassion for them. So if they require compassion, they need to show compassion for others. And try to do this way. You get a sick person. We could encourage sick people to pray for other people. A sick person should give charity because as soon as a sick person gives charity, then the sick person shows that he has compassion for that particular cause, that particular poor person. Once he gives the charity, the law is, this is spiritual law, according to the Torah 119, that Hashem must have compassion on that person. Okay, so Rebbe Nachman continues. He says, Shabbat is Prinat Adat. Why does Rebbe Nachman speak about visiting a sick person on Shabbat? Because Shabbat, that is the aspect of spiritual awareness. People that, look at people that work like machines. They 24/7, and they don't turn their motors off all week long. They don't turn their cell phones all week long. They don't turn off their televisions, their computers, whatever they have all week long. And their minds are blown. Either they're zombies, or their minds are completely blown out. There's too many CPUs. Shabbat, when a person has the spiritual awareness to rest on Shabbat and to take a breather and to stop and think that the world is not just here. There's Hashem. And sit at the table. You haven't seen your family all week long. Everybody in the family is all off on a tangent. And on Shabbat, have the whole family at a table. Hey, guys, remember, we're a family. We're a family. We sing together. We learn together. We eat together. And so many of the young people, they're not interested because they never, with lack of spiritual awareness in the family, they forgot completely about the family. The kids are off with their friends. Okay, you have 6 days a week to be off with your friends. What about the family? Because eventually we know that the friends come and go, but your family, what do they say in English? Blood is thicker than water. So Shabbat is an aspect of spiritual awareness, tells us Rebbe Nachman, that the Torah has a play on words. Rebbe Nachman says, when we talk about the manna, that all 6 days of the week, they would cruise in the field and gather the manna. Now, cruising, they say, the Torah says shatu, and nonsense is shtut. It's the same word. So a person that cruises all week long on the seventh day is a person that's in nonsense. A person with nonsense. In other words, a fool that lacks spiritual awareness. Because Shabbat doesn't observe the Shabbat. A person that doesn't observe the Shabbat doesn't take a breather. And this is a day for the soul. Look at how lovely Hashem's compassion is. Okay, take that seventh day and make it a day for the soul and drink your best wine, eat your best meat. You can't afford to eat meat during the week, maybe, who knows? But on Shabbat, you have your best meat, you have your best food. You can't rest. What do you say, 5-6 hours a night? On Shabbat, it's an 8-hour nice sleep and take a rest in the afternoon. Hashem gives Hashem allows when your soul is rejoicing, your body rejoices also. And this is what Rebbe Nachman is teaching us. And this is the power of keeping the Shabbat. And it's the power of visiting the sick on Shabbat. So Rebbe Nachman concludes this Torah by saying, that we say Hashem has the capability of having compassion on you because this is the day of compassion, the day of Shabbat, the day of spiritual awareness. Compassion and spiritual awareness are synonymous. So since you remember that this is Shabbat, and you have compassion on your body and your soul, Hashem has compassion on you. But the person that the person with this smartphone kyphosis, who's jaywalking and doesn't look at the traffic, person has no compassion on himself or herself. So therefore, Hashem says, sorry, you don't care about yourself. I should care about you. And this we have to do. This is mida connected mida. This measure for measure. Someone's world measure for measure. So this is the power of showing compassion. As soon as we show compassion with a compassion deed, we invoke compassion on ourselves. And for anyone who shows compassion, this is Olam Chesed Yibaneh. King David gave us a secret to that also. He said Hashem built the word out of compassion. So when you show compassion on yourself and other people, no, not that you don't. It's not selfishness. You have to have compassion on yourself. Is developing your emunah, developing your spiritual awareness, knowing that Hashem runs the world, knowing that you're going to be happy not by seeking what the commercials on the Google advertisement tells you what to see for. They put an algorithm in your computer because they see what you're interested in and they try to trap you. No, that's not going to give you happiness. Happiness is if you follow Emunah Hour and follow the 13 principles of Emunah and everything we have to learn about Emunah and everything we're learning tonight, not only that you could find, if you have a young person that doesn't have compassion on himself and have a chance to influence, that our whole purpose of writing that little book, Path to Your Peak, and it's helped a lot of people because a lot of people, you'd be amazed how many people don't realize that they have a soul. And they think every people, the modern day generation, think it's a body. It's a body and it's a brain. But they think the brain is finite. The brain is not finite. The brain is finite until one activates his or her spiritual awareness. Once we activate our spiritual awareness and we realize that there's Emunah and that there's Hashem, that we gain spiritual awareness, we gain compassion, but just as Hashem is compassionate, we have compassion on ourselves and on other people. And we have compassion on ourselves. What does it mean we have compassion on ourselves? We're going to take care of our health, and we're not going to overeat, and we're going to exercise, and we're not going to stay glued to a screen. We're going to pick up a book and read a book, and we're going to do things that are positive, and we're going to stop and think that what must I be doing to make myself and to make this world a better place? To make myself better, make the world a better place. Why did Hashem give me all these unique talents? What does Hashem want me to do in the world? These are questions that a spiritually aware person asks, person with dot. And when you start answering these questions, or even looking for answers to these questions, you're going to attain happiness, you're going to attain fulfillment, and all your heart's wishes for the best.
Die, 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 die.